Senator Kingston, I mean, he's right, and some of the people who were leading the charge for those investigations are now saying that this should not be investigated. But just a bit of background here before I get your response. You have done business, Representative, in Russia. Do all of these questions swirling around the contacts between Russia and the Trump campaign cloud what you have called the president's fresh start on Russia?
I think they do, and I think, frankly, the left is not helping our national security picture right now. I understand the left is still very mad about losing this election. I understand the left probably is furious with President Obama having known that the Russians were spying on America and actually interfering in the election and did not do enough about it. But still, at this point, the left seems to be so gleeful, they're forgetting that this still is one nation and that they are doing what they can, I think, to help enemies and weaken America abroad. I think they should overplay they're overplaying their hand here. There's some serious questions here.
Okay. Let me ask you this, because you're mentioning the people that Brian mentioned were both, the people who are asking for an independent investigation are both Republicans and very well respected and highly regarded Republicans. And I don't see people taking glee in this. I think people just want to get the information. And so to that point, why would people in the Trump campaign, people who have contact with the Trump campaign, why would they be in contact so many times, so frequently, with Russians known to U.S. intelligence? What would be the purpose of that?
Don, let me say this. I don't know that they were. And frankly, I don't know how anybody else knows that they were unless within our own national security, members of the national security, the intel group are so against Donald Trump that they're breaking the law.
They have intercepted communications, Representative, and I had people come on this show last night around this same time saying the same thing, and then 5 minutes later, Flynn had to resign. Go on.
Well, they're running to the media rather than running to the Department of Justice or running to Donald Trump and saying, hey, we've got some issues out here. When Mike Flynn was being spied on, he was a private citizen. There's nothing under the law that allows American intelligence agencies to spy or wiretap on an American citizen.
So if he was a private
citizen
citizen and he did not have authority to handle U.S. intelligence or business for the United States, to speak for the U.S. government, then that is a violation of the Logan Act, is it not?
Well, we don't know exactly what he said if he did violate the Logan Act, but what we do know is that he was spied on by American security agencies, and that's against the law. Now, let me say this to Brian and Don. You know, today we had Republicans speaking up about this, some very measured. Peter King said something, Roy Blunt said something, Lindsey Graham said something. So, you know, I don't see this as being something that Republicans are running from at all, but I think there are still very, very serious questions on how does an American intelligence agency spy on a private citizen and then leak information.
This is what you have wrong about that, Jack. These were routine interception surveillance, and it wasn't of a private citizen. It was people who were in contact with Russians who, for some reason, this guy was an ambassador to Russia. All of the ambassadors to Russia's calls have the possibility of being intercepted. This was a routine interception. They were not looking for anything that the general was doing. They were monitoring a Russian ambassador. This wasn't they were trying to catch General Flynn. So I think you have that part of it wrong. But I want to get Brian in here. Do you believe that the investigation, Brian, into these contacts should have been revealed before the election?
Certainly, especially since you had Director Comey take the unprecedented step of sending a letter 10 days out from the election about a matter that turned out to be nothing with respect to Hillary Clinton. So I don't understand why he would have stayed silent given these egregious details that are just now coming out about communications between the Trump campaign and Russian government officials. But to the Congressman's point, I think there's two reasons to not give Donald Trump and his administration the benefit of the doubt here. First of all these high-level contacts were happening at the same time that you had Donald Trump making a series of strange, peculiar, pro-Putin statements with respect to his position on NATO, with respect to almost apologizing or defending Russia's unlawful annexation of Crimea. You've had Donald Trump consistently hold open the possibility of rolling back the sanctions that were imposed in the aftermath of the annexation of Crimea, and subsequently hold open the possibility of removing the sanctions that were imposed for the hack.
Okay,
Why is he
Brian.
making all these statements of
Brian,
Russia?
We're running out of time. Jack, I want you to respond. Go ahead.
But Brian, remember, it was Hillary Clinton who did the famous reset. It was President Obama who was the president when Putin invaded Crimea and the Ukraine and did very little about it. It was President Obama who allowed Russia and Iran to fund the Assad army in Syria against innocent citizens and cause the largest refugee crisis in the history of the world. I think Donald Trump as a candidate was saying, you know what? I hope we can have a better relationship with Russia, and maybe we can work with them to take on ISIS, which was another thing that happened under President Obama's watch. So I don't think any of his statements were strange, but I will say this is what was strange to me, is President Obama knew that the Russians were potentially interfering in the election. And at the G20 or the G7, I'm not sure which meeting, he just called them to the side. And these were his exact words. He said, and I told Putin, you guys need to cut it out. I mean, to me, there's some bipartisan questions.
You don't think
in
if
the
he had
air.
said something